Everyone doing? So, Strength Chat episode 33, and I've got a very special guest for you. I'm catching up with a very good friend and a very old mate, Clennan of Integrum Nutrition and Fitness. How are
Yeah.
you?
Yeah, splendid. Thank you very much.
Congratulations on your wedding. For anyone listening who doesn't know Connor, recently married.
Yeah.
What else has been going on? What else has been going on in your world?
What else has been going on? So I suppose keeping it specific, as you know, Steve, I've got like a little 1-year-old girl now. So that has completely changed my perspective on nutrition and fitness.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can empathise now with real adults and how hard it is doing the balancing act. So yeah. Otherwise, just building a business, building a website, moving the online, and doing a lot of consultation and more corporate work now, rather than just being in the gym all day every day, which is it's a new challenge.
Yeah. So obviously, a couple of days ago, we both put out some questions of basically a little bit of myth busting. I know last time when I came up to chat with you a couple of months ago, a lot of people ask you questions and the content you put out there. You quite like to sort of put some of the myths to bed. So we'll get the ball rolling. And the first question that cropped up was, when should you be eating carbs and how much carbs should you be eating? Because carbs, everyone seems to be a little bit, do I eat them? Do I not eat them? Do I eat loads? Do I not eat much? What is the answer on that?
Well, yeah, so as you said, like I get asked questions all the time just off the hoof, whether it's at a party, a social event, in the gym, or in a consultation. But I'd say at least 50% of questions involve the word carbs or sugar, and there's a big old thing about it these days. But the answer to most nutrition questions is it depends, and that's definitely the case with this one. With it being so vague, but what I'd say is my first sort of questions would be like, okay, what are you trying to achieve? What activities do you do? Are you in a deficit? Are you not? But it depends. We should always be eating carbohydrates, definitely. But the type of carbohydrates and the timing of them would definitely be dictated by what you do. If you're an endurance athlete, you need to be having, up to from 6 to 10 grams per kilo of body weight to maintain your training load. And for you, Steve, and your strongman and your powerlifters, that's not, anything above 6 reps isn't an endurance event, unfortunately. So there's a much lower need for it. People in day-to-day life, much lower needs, somewhere around 3 grams per kilo is probably adequate. If you're on a deficit, if you're in a calorie deficit, trying to lose weight and all the rest of it whilst sustaining some performance and some training, then it's probably important to consider the timings. And then the classic is just around training. If you really want to prioritize, let's go pre-training, because the actual recovery there's not too much difference between protein plus carbs versus just protein. So definitely pre-training. Otherwise, personal preferences. Some people, it can be a lot more feasible to have quite a carbohydrate heavy breakfast versus a low carbohydrate breakfast. So if you're concentrating your carbohydrates there, it might mean reducing them in the rest of the day. For some people, certainly a lot of my clients, it's about shifting them to a weekend because that's where their main carbohydrate consumption is. But we definitely need them, and it's just thinking about why you need them, what you're using them for, and what sort of sources.
One thing that when we say carbs, this might be another question, but people say, well, what carbs do I eat? Where do I get them from? Do I smash a load of pasta? Do I eat a load of potatoes? What do you recommend, and what do you coach?
That's definitely a good point. And you come onto the whole like real food sort of thing, and you've got people who are like, well, I can't have X carb for whatever reason. I can't have potatoes, I can't have bread or whatever because they're bad carbs, and then they're having a post-workout shake that's got 50 grams of glutamine in. And to me, where's the difference there? Most of my private clients, they're normal people, they're real everyday people who happen to be interested in training and taking care of their bodies. But for me, it's trying to find a life balance. And if there's somebody who has a family, and they're wanting to have a sit down meal with a family, or going out with their partner, or, you know, out with friends for dinner, then you may as well put your carbohydrates around then. And that might come in the guise of potatoes, it might come in the guise of pasta, bread, whatever it may be. And if that's the case, then just stop having the glutamine in the shake, in the post-workout shake, or the pre-workout, or the mass gainer, or whatever it is. But if we're talking about like optimal sources, what I'm thinking about, certainly with a weight loss bias, is thinking about satiety. So how filling that thing is, which is carbohydrates are great for. And I'm thinking about, well, potato is the highest food on the satiety index. Okay. It's got a score of, so just to give you an idea, satiety index is, there's been many studies done on it, but it's a scale of foods from least filling to most filling. And the most filling food on the satiety index is potatoes. Potatoes has a score of like 323, where bread has got 100. And then you've got things like cakes and stuff with scores of like 30. So you can get 10 times more full eating potatoes than junk food. Oats, whole grain foods, because of the nutrients that they bring as well, potentially more optimal choices. But for a lot of people, it's just about breaking down the fear of carbohydrates and going, you know, as a whole, they're not a bad thing. It's just a tendency to overconsume them that can be bad.
Yeah. Okay. So that was a pretty good answer. That I didn't know about.
I told you I could waffle. I told you.
So the next question that came up, you touched on a little bit about supplements.
Yeah.
This is mainly for, I know I get it when mainly guys that come into the gym and want to put a little bit of mass on, putting a little stronger.
Yeah.
One of the first questions is, what supplements should I take? You know,
right.
how many shakes should I be drinking a day?
Yeah.
Can you put muscle mass on? Is it by just drinking supplements? What's your
right? Okay. Yeah. Good one. And that again is a classic. It's you know, first start training. Should I not? And actually, yeah, a lot of the time it's guys, but more and more you're getting women asking, is it safe? Is it okay? Should I be consuming supplements? When we're talking about mass gain, we're probably talking about protein shakes, potentially looking at creatine, things like that. But especially these, which I talked about, these sort of like mass building protein shakes, which have got lots of cheap carbohydrates, lots of glutamine in them to increase the calorie content. For me, it's not about whether you should or whether you can. It's about, is there any point? What I will say is, and you know, for mass gain, are we talking about mass in terms of just, you know, weight, or are we wanting to gain muscle, and actual usable muscle, or are we just trying to gain strength? And that's what I would get straight first, because if you're wanting to just gain mass, then yeah, eat and drink everything inside.
Yeah.
You know, maybe in that instance, looking at our background, that could be just a rugby player who, you know, is just a little bit too small to hold their own in the front row, got all the technical ability that just need to gain some mass, then yeah, fair enough. If you're looking to gain muscle, my first and foremost point is, if you're somebody who's got a little bit of training experience and has been in the gym for a little while, you can gain 1 kilo of muscle per year maximum. With all the best nutrition, all the best training principles, this is naturally, you can gain at most 1 kilo of muscle. So would I be looking to spend a fortune and drink this, that, and the other constantly just to optimize that 1 kilo, when actually probably making a couple of 100 grams difference? Maybe not. I'd probably be making sure that the muscle that I do gain is usable and functional, either in developing strength, power, speed, whatever it's for.
I think we chatted about it last time I was up, and I think you mentioned that study once before.
Yeah.
About put a kilo of muscle over a certain amount of time. I know for some people coming in, some people already have that muscle there. It's just, that's quite high as well. So
yeah, absolutely.
Really, the real question of that is, you touched on it a little bit, is, you know, you've already got that muscle there. You're about, if you just want to get bigger, yeah, just do that. But sometimes losing a little bit of fat, it looks as though you've got more muscle.
Yeah.
You're just looking in a little bit better shape.
Exactly.
Do you go down more of a getting as much of that in by wholesome food, by eating natural food? Do you never usually recommend supplements?
Yeah, I mean, I don't. To be honest with you, I go with the client, and the ultimate point is muscle building is about adequate protein content. 1.8 to 2.2 grams per kilo. Now, for some people, let's use you and I, for example. I'm sitting at 73 kilos at the moment. Could probably do with getting a little bit of muscle, but 2 times that is about 150 grams of protein. That's not that difficult to get from food. For yourself,
a little bit more than 70.
Yeah, a little bit more than 73. You're looking quite a lot more. So, potentially you might be finding it quite arduous or having to use quite calorific sources to get enough protein in. Now, if you were wanting to, as you say, optimize your muscle gain, but also be in a deficit to try and get a little bit leaner, because as you say, the leaner we look, then it makes you look a little bit bigger, a little bit more muscular and more defined. If you're trying to do that with minimal calorie content, and also being mindful of the cost, because it's pretty expensive eating chicken breasts all the time for a lot of people, and inconvenient. So I'm not an advocate of, I'm not a pusher of supplements, but if you're somebody who is wanting to optimize your protein intake whilst keeping your calories low, keeping it very convenient and keeping it cheap, then potentially protein shakes can give you that. But as you say, the real foods, the whole foods, if you can get this from proper foods and a good variety of food, that's always better for long-term health as well. Frankly, a balance of the two. I would never go just supplements, definitely not. But there can be exactly that. And the word is supplement. They're never replacement. They're supplement to a good diet already. And yeah, for me, it's client-centered. It depends where they're at.
Yeah, like you said, sometimes life gets in the way to going out for a meal, or you just, got caught short, can't really, you can't get any food, right? A shake might be easier.
Yeah.
Just on that as well, about sort of muscle mass and that sort of stuff, you mentioned about making sure that you've got adequate amount of protein.
Yeah.
This is something that I always get stuck on as well. So One question was, can you build muscle on a vegan or vegetarian diet?
Yeah. So this is a controversial one, isn't it? Do you know what? You can. It's just not as easy, and it's just not optimal. So that's a word I use quite a lot, is optimal. Because when all the work I do is based off evidence, based off research, and we're always looking at optimal in scientific research. And then the thing is the actual convenient application. It isn't optimal to build muscle on a vegan diet, purely because, as I'm saying, about that protein intake. And I think whilst we're talking about muscle building, nutrition is just the sort of, it is optimizing. It's just making sure that extra 10% is taken care of. Training is the most important factor with muscle building. So if you're training properly and having a vegan diet, you're probably going to build muscle. That's better than somebody who's not training properly and having a omnivorous diet.
Yeah.
The reason it's harder is because of the amount of protein, but also when we're talking about protein content, we actually mean leucine content, which is the amino acid responsible for muscle building. Now, again, optimal is 4 servings of 0.55 grams per kilo of body weight. So, Stephen, if you were 100 kilos, you'd be wanting to have 55 grams of protein 4 times a day to hit your leucine thresholds. Now, some protein sources are higher and lower in leucine than others. Hence, whey protein. Whey is a really high leucine content protein source. Dairy is really good. Meat's really good. And actually, as you start coming down the ladder, it's all non-vegan, non-vegetarian foods. And your things like your kidney beans, your pulses, your tofus and things like that. Yes, they're protein sources, but they're much lower in leucine, gram for gram, than the meats and the dairies. So yes, it's possible. It's just not optimal, and you need to have these vegan or vegetarian protein options in much higher quantities to be able to hit those leucine thresholds.
Do you find that, because obviously thinking about that, of trying to get that amount of leucine in, what are the quantities like of that? Can people actually eat that amount, or do they always fall short?
Yeah, well,
where are you getting your protein sources from? And they'll say, oh yeah, I get it from, you know, here, there, and anywhere. But do you find that people always struggle to eat that amount?
Yeah, I think definitely. What I've got is for vegan and vegetarian clients I've worked with, I've got a list of these sort of vegan vegetarian protein sources and the amount of leucine per average serving. And actually, if you've got like a client Facebook group, I'll send that over to you and you can share it with your guys. But what's quite apparent is that the average serving is really quite low. So if you were a vegan or vegetarian trying to build muscle but just eating ad hoc, you'd probably be really quite deficient. However, if you're aware of that, you can make a conscious effort to increase those portion sizes. And the good thing is that those type of things, the pulses, the beans and the rest of it, the lentils, those types of things, they've got other benefits as well. So increasing the intake then is no bad thing. And actually, it's, for me, it always baffles me that we're quite so dichotomous about our protein sources of, even as omnivorous eaters, why aren't we, supplementing our diet with these vegan or vegetarian protein sources when they're just actually really good foods that have happened to be high in protein as well? Yeah. And it seems like we've got to be exclusive of they're the protein sources for vegans and they're the protein sources for omnivorous people. Now, obviously, you can't go that way, but I think we should definitely be having more of these things. Yeah. The other thing as well, just as I'm waffling out here, picking up on it, the other issue with vegan and vegetarian is that it can be quite low in fat. And fat regulates testosterone production or testosterone levels. And as we know, they need to be elevated for muscle building. So that can cause issues as well, such as with deficiencies in iron and things too.
I think it's a good point when you were saying, categorizing them as vegan or omnivorous, having a little bit of both. It's a little bit about balance. I think people go, go one way, right, I'm going to be a vegan, right, I'm only going to have this, I'm going to have any meat, no fish, or anything like that. And if we're meat eaters, I think probably we in excess of meat, we probably eat a little.
Absolutely, yeah.
Crossing it over a little bit, like my opinion is we're designed to eat meat and we're designed to eat vegetables and that sort of stuff.
Yeah, we are omnivores, yeah.
Yeah, having a little bit of a balance of it is sometimes a little bit better than going one extreme.
Yeah, definitely. And there's the plant-based movement, I think, is really good for that, because it's not saying that you have to be completely one way or the other, but there's no denying that there's a lot of health benefits to basing our diet around plants and then supplementing it with meat and things. The obvious issue there is if you're vegan for moral reasons, then that's your decision, and that's something that, as a nutritionist, as a trainer, I'm never going to interfere with. But if I'm confronted with somebody who's going vegetarian or vegan for what they think is health reasons, then yeah, I'll definitely go down that. Well, absolutely be plant-based, but potentially for certain sources of nutrients, we need to include things like maybe fish, maybe eggs, maybe little bits of meat now and again.
Yeah, I have found, and maybe you found this as well as a coach, people who are doing it because they think it's for health reasons, after a while then go back to eating meat. Definitely, I've trained a few people that, for moral reasons, they just won't go near meat. That's fine. But
absolutely.
They looked into how to, like you mentioned, about how to get the best sources of protein.
Yeah.
So the next one then, this is one that it crops up every now and again. It's going back to the carbs. And a few months it won't get mentioned, then it'll get mentioned again. Sort of peaks and troughs on this one. Carbs before bed. Will you get really, really fat if you have carbs before bed?
Do you know what I was saying? I had sort of started making a few notes This is the only one that I've not made any note. Well, I've made one word note on, and it's no. So if you want me to speed up, we'll just leave that one there. But yeah, working, as you know, I work with a lot of fighters who quite old school and traditional, set in their way about how they approach things, and it comes up all the time for me. And I thought this had been put to bed. No is the answer.
Right. So anyone else listening who has any questions about cards for bed, you've heard it here now. No, you won't get it back.
Just no. If you want to know more, do ask, and we'll sort of talk about it more. But no.
Okay. So the next one then, obviously creatine is probably one of the most researched supplements out there.
Yeah.
And yeah, I've recommended people using it, and yeah, there's loads of stuff on there. Easy. Type in creatine on Google. And
yeah.
Do you need to load and cycle creatine?
Right. Yeah. So well, firstly, yeah, as you say, one of the most, if not the most, that and caffeine, the most evidence-based supplements that there are. And actually, the stuff is more than just the muscle stuff, which I'll go on to in a sec. But you don't need to. It's not necessary. I think what we've got to say about creatine is it's not an acute supplement. So it's not a supplement where you take it once and it has an effect. It's a long-term supplement. So for that reason, it's not necessary to load it, because you can saturate your muscle creatine with about 5 grams a day. So you could take any tablets. Like the one thing everybody says about creatine is the tablets are huge, aren't they? Yeah. So they usually go for the powder. Yeah. But the serving prescription is usually about 5 grams, whether it's a scoop or a tablet.
It doesn't matter when you take it through the day, does it? You don't have to take it.
No, exactly, yeah. Because it's a long term and more of like a chronic intervention, the daily sort of timing doesn't really matter too much. You can take it in like 4-5 gram servings per day of like a 5-day period if you really want to load, but it's not necessary. All that's going to do is maybe slightly speed up the time which you're going to start and see the effects of it. But realistically, there's no need to load, and for the same reason, there's no real need to cycle.
Yeah.
And as you say, I know you work with a lot of strength athletes. That's your thing. For me, so we've both got the rugby background. I've read a lot of research, looked into a lot of research about creatine supplementation and the protective effects of our concussion and long-term memory loss. Really good for brain function. So elderly people, I work with a few elderly clients who supplement creatine as well as omega-3 for protective effects over things like memory loss, illnesses, and the effects of it are being more and more research. We're spanning out of that repeated sprint performance, repeated maximal performance stuff. Even now, there's stuff coming out saying that it might negate the effects of sleep deficiency, sleep deprivation. Okay. So yeah, as a new dad, creatine supplementation.
On 5 grams, come on.
Yeah. First thing in the morning, get me my bag of creatine.
So a point on that is because I know when you get creatine or I don't even know any supplement work, protein works or whatever. You actually say load and cycle it on there, but your recommendation is not needed.
It's not necessary, no. And again, I think these protein, what's always worth acknowledging is these supplement websites. They would go with guidance based on, they've probably got somebody employed to, look at the guidance, and often with certain things, their best tool is probably Google. And not necessarily staying contemporary with stuff. It doesn't matter either way. But when when you start to coach people, which really shows the difference, people will come back and say, and I have told people to load before, even knowing that it's not absolutely necessary. I've said, just load it up for the first 5 days, just so we're starting to speed up that process. But they'll often come back and go, the powder tastes like crap and the tablets are massive. So I can just about manage 5 grams. The last thing I want to be doing is having 20, 25 grams a day.
Yeah.
So again, meeting the client where they're at, meeting the person where they're at, if you can just about manage 5 grams a day and then make that routine, then great. And that's the thing about cycling for me. Once it becomes a routine and they break that routine of, okay, I'm not going to take it for 6 weeks, you've got to start that routine all over again.
Yeah.
So regular supplementation, yeah, why not?
So the next one is a little bit, it's quite a specific one, this one. So,
all right.
A 95 kilo male who trains strongman.
Yeah.
What were the macros for that?
Right, okay, so what I would say is macros get talked about a lot. Yeah, what my big question is that person competing in like a weight category? Or are they just in, because I know that, is there an under 90s or an under 95 strongman class?
Yeah, I think it's under 90s and then it's like under 110 kilos.
Oh, right, okay. So that person's, what I would say to that person is, right, do you want to come down and go to the under 90s where you'd be, you know, one of the biggest, stronger people in that, or do you want to work up to the 110s or whatever? At that point, I'd probably start to think about it, about macros. As it is, though, if they're not really concerned about weight for their performance, I'd not be too fussed about macros. What I would be saying is, okay, adequate protein, and then from there, once we've got our 2 grams of protein, I'd be then looking at for a strongman who it's a strength event. It's not necessarily an endurance event, although at times it might feel it. I'd be prioritizing fat before carbohydrates. So because of those reasons, for elevating testosterone levels and things like that, reducing injury incidence. And then, so I'd be looking to get fat around 1 gram per kilo or maybe slightly above. And then carbohydrates, I would be thinking about in terms of ensuring that energy is adequate for training. So the reason I say macros are overrated is because there's a lot of talk about macro splits or, you know, quantity of macros. For me, it's about, right, get your protein correct, get enough protein, and then from there, let's think about the other 2 macros in terms of how much do we need to give us what we want, rather than a percentage, because a percentage is just very black and white. On some days, even like with the same individual, on some days they might need or want more carbohydrates than other days. So yeah, I think the macro splits are a little bit overrated. Make sure that you're getting enough protein and then enough calories to facilitate your training and stuff.
I think that's a good way to think about it, because you know, protein is the building blocks, if you like. That's what you need all the time. And keeping track of your fats and your carbs. The first thing that comes to my mind there is a little bit like, I know for me, for my training powerlifting, obviously I'll work off an RPE scale. So one day, like for example, today, I'm feeling a little bit tired. It was an early start this morning, done a morning shift at work, and then I've got to work up to an RPE 8 or 9 on deadlift. Today that's not going to be as heavy as what I know it is, and I think if you're going with that mentality for the same for carbs and fats day to day, you might have a really, really busy day, and you might need a few more carbs, or depending on what you're doing, you might be able to change. There seems to be a running theme of life gets in the way sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think sometimes it's like, you probably find it with training programs and things. Sometimes the best laid plan is not the best laid plan. The best plan is the one that is actually flexible with you and that you can adhere to. With strongman training and things like that, the other caveat is, got to remember this strongman is also a person. Is this person concerned about their appearance as well whilst they're optimizing their performance or training? If we're assuming that they're not and they're just like an out-and-out athlete, all we're concerned about them is training performance and actual event day performance. So that's when perhaps macros are a little bit more important, and we're thinking about some quick release carbohydrates, you know, your gels and things like that. But actually probably more likely to have a genuine positive effect in terms of nutrition is things like beta-alanine and caffeine supplementation in the form of a pre-workout, Yeah, caffeine for endurance throughout the day, creatine for a long time beforehand. Things like that are probably going to have a better sort of effect in terms of a nutrition intervention than just day-to-day macro splits.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that was quite a specific one. So you lifted 95 kilo male strongman. There's your answer for you.
Yeah.
So just staying on the theme of lifting and that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
A lot of people always ask, when should I eat before or after training? I think it was what was the saying? You need to get protein in. You got 45-minute window after your training. You need to get it.
Yeah.
Is there a magic window for people who are lifting, or is like the whole point of this episode, or is that just a myth?
There's a window, yeah, but the window isn't just a shut and close. Essentially it sort of peaks, and it goes back to those Lucian thresholds. So I was saying about 4 times per day, and what we've got is it's the peaking of the opportunity for muscle protein synthesis. So that's where if you put protein into your body, that will be synthesized into the muscle, and that's naturally peaks and troughs throughout the day. So hence the 4 feedings, but also post training as we're breaking down the muscle. It's peaked that opportunity for muscle protein synthesis. Now, it remains peaked for a short period and then starts to drop like this. But it remains elevated above baseline for about 24 to 36 hours. So as long as you're eating in that time, it's still above baseline. The thing is, it's somewhere around 0 to 60 minutes that it's really, really highly elevated for. So the answer is, and this is where the supplements can possibly come in, is if you're somebody who, say, works in Leeds, comes to the gym, but then they live outside of Leeds and it takes them an hour and a half, 2 hours to get home, and then they've got to make something. So by the time they get home and have something, it's about 3 hours later. Then potentially a protein supplement immediately or after you've got changed and stuff, as you're on your way home, could optimize your results and your recovery. But if you can get home quite quickly and then you're going to have your normal evening meal, and which is whole foods and things like that, then absolutely fine. You don't need to worry about just taking in unnecessary calories, just taking down your mass gainer as soon as you finish your last set.
Sometimes I know a couple of guys that have trained, smashed a protein shake, and then gone home and ate. What's your sort of thoughts on that? Pointless or just a little bit extra?
Well, again, it depends on. It's not optimal, is the answer. It's not optimal because it's trying to be so optimal it ends up not being at all. It's not optimal in the sense of you wouldn't have your protein that close together in an ideal world. Like you'd split up the feedings, and it depends. So if their total protein intake for the day has been quite low, maybe they're, I don't know, somebody who follows intermittent fasting and they've had nothing all day, so they're trying to backload all the protein, then I can see where they're coming from. But in that sense, it isn't optimal. It's optimal to spread it throughout the day. What I would say is it's probably a waste of money. It's probably a waste of calories. I would say if you know you're going home to have something, don't worry about the shake. Particularly if you are concerned about weight loss, fat loss, and things like that. On the other hand, if you know you're going home to something that is quite low in protein, so you've just done your training session, you've had your shake afterwards. Again, use the 100 kilo male. If they need to be having 200 odd grams of protein and about 55 per serving, if they've had a 30 to 40 gram protein shake and then go home to have something like lasagna, which might be quite low in protein, fair enough. There's probably an argument there. But if you're going home to have 2 chicken breasts, broccoli and rice, then protein shake was probably pointless.
Yeah. Okay. So the next question is going back to macros. Okay. I know obviously we've sort of chatted a little bit about macros at the be all and end all. In terms of actual food sources. So I
Yeah.
think the person who actually asked this question is trying to drop a weight class for powerlifting.
Okay.
If I've got it correctly. So for fat loss, if you are counting macros or whatever you're doing with your nutrition, where is it best to drop your calories from first?
Okay, so it depends where they are currently.
Yeah.
So what I would do is go, because ultimately macros are just a subdivision of calories. So what we need to do is we need to drop our calories. Now we want to keep protein at that 1.6 to 2.2 grams level. Now, depending where the other two are, if one's really high and one's already really low, we obviously need to drop the one that's really high. Yeah. So if that's somebody who, right, my protein's taken care of, but my fats are really low, but my carbs are really high, it's obviously going to be easier to drop them from carbs. People lean towards dropping them from carbs first because, particularly when you've got weight class type people, whether that be fighters, lifters, whatever it might be, for every gram of carbohydrates you lose from, let's say, muscle glycogen, you lose 3 to 4 grams of water as well. So you notice an accelerated rate of weight loss. But if you're trying to drop a weight class, not just make weight for a weight class, that's not necessarily long-term sustainable, because at some point you're going to have to replenish that muscle glycogen so that you can actually function, you can actually train, and then you're going to regain the water. As a lifter, what I would also say is it's very similar to, the powerlifting, the strongman. It's all similar in terms of energy demands. That fat is probably prioritized above carbohydrates. You can have quite a low carbohydrate diet generally, and when I say that, I don't mean keto and things like that. I just mean relatively low to most people, as long as you're prioritizing it pre-training, which goes back to that first question. So I prioritize the carbohydrates pre-training, making sure that you've got enough energy, making sure that we've got adequate protein, and then just keeping the fats to a level that's around 0.6 to 1 gram per kilo. And then from there, what you do is work, right, okay, this is how many calories I'm going to have. This is how long that deficit is going to take me to achieve the weight that I want. In terms of dropping a weight class, rather than going, oh God, which I get with the fighters all the time. Oh, I've got a week left and I need to drop X kilos. Yeah. You think, no, it's not going to happen.
Yeah. Is it for dropping down weight? Let's just say for general health. Is it better to do it over a prolonged period of time, make it a little bit more sustainable, or you'll see some people come in and they'll have dropped 4 kilos relatively quickly, and then they expect that next month.
Yeah.
Is it better to, if you are, dropping your fat down in your diet or dropping down the carbs, whatever, is it better to have that sustainable over a longer period of time? Would you recommend that?
Yeah, I think the nice answer is is the sustainable over a long period of time, the lifestyle changes and the rest of it. For me, what I always do, or if I've got somebody who's got a goal for a large weight loss, I'll schedule in these periods. So I'll get them for a week or two just to do maintenance.
Yeah.
And what you often notice is at a theoretical maintenance, they tend to lose weight anyway. Just because they've probably been eating more than they tell you, or they start to just subconsciously eat less, they're starting to be active. All these positive things result in a little bit of weight loss anyway. But some people want results yesterday. Some people want that instant gratification. So a large deficit, as long as you're not confronted with somebody who's a tiny person and is barely able to eat anything anyway, a large deficit over a short period can be quite rewarding. It can be quite motivating. And as long as it's done healthily and with proper foods and not just having small amounts of junk food, then personally, as long as it's supervised, I've got no problem with that. But what I'll always do is have that over a short period and follow that up with a reverse diet or a maintenance phase. And through that, then what I'm going to do is work on things like behavior change. So food swaps, changing your food environment, starting to get into an activity regime, and then have that small deficit over a longer period. The only issue with the small deficit over a longer period is adaptive thermogenesis. So if I put somebody on a 200 calorie a day deficit, they're going to see, or 250 calories a day, they're going to see half a pound fat loss per week, which is good consistently over a year. That's 20 odd pounds. That's great. But what's probably going to happen after a long time of being on a deficit, they're either going to not be as accurate in tracking, if they are tracking, or just not as accurate in gauging it. Their activity is going to drop. If they have a bad day or a cheat day, all of a sudden an extra 1,000 calories on a bad day completely wipes out the whole week of hard work and effort. So that's when we get plateaus, or people saying, oh, I'm on a deficit, but I'm just not losing any weight. And that can be quite demotivating. So that's where, for me, those periods of more rapid weight loss, followed by behaviour change, followed by a gradual weight loss, and just complementing them all together can work much better in a long-term plan.
It's funny you said about if you do lose motivation, if you go off your nutrition or go off your diet plan.
Yeah.
The question followed up from that was
seamless.
A bit of open-ended question there.
Yeah.
What do you do if you do go off plan? How do you stay motivated? When I saw this question, from my point of view, sometimes it comes down to the person, how committed they are to their results. I don't know what your thoughts or what your answer was to that.
Yeah, so for me, well, that question in itself is open to interpretation. So what I'm going to ask is why is that person, why do they want to go off plan, for starters? Now, if that's because their diet doesn't allow them to, from time to time, do the things that they want to do or enjoy the foods that they want to enjoy, they've probably got the wrong diet, or they're probably doing their diet wrong. Now, and a classic example of that is if you're living the Tupperware lifestyle and you're not a Tupperware lifestyle person, stop doing the Tupperware lifestyle thing. You and I know what I mean by that. If the whole chicken and broccoli in a tub. If you're somebody who is quite a sociable person, or you're a business person, which type of people I often work with, the last thing they're going to do in a big business meeting, at a dinner down in London, is crack open a Tupperware of asparagus and boiled chicken. Yeah. So for me, it's about carefully planning your diet so that it doesn't interfere with your lifestyle to an extent where you can't stick to it all the time. Because, as I always say, adherence is key to any plan. So it could be a complete review of your diet, or in the long term, like I say about those behavior replacement things. So an example of this would be, I've just been working with a lady who is funny. The first thing she said to me, I said, how can I help you? What is it that you want from me? She said, well, I'll be honest with you, Connor, I'm just really lazy. I was like, all right, thanks for your honesty. She said, and also I'm a cupboard diver. I start off really, really well, and then comes to an evening and I'm a cupboard diver. So for if that's this sort of break of diet that we're talking about, we could be looking at behaviour replacement. So I said to her, right, let's combat your laziness and your cupboard diving in one. Every time you want to go dive into a cupboard, you've got to go out the house and do a lap of the block before you come back and dive in the cupboard. Because by then you've probably had long enough to talk to yourself and go, do I really need that chocolate biscuit or whatever I was going to get? You've got some fresh air, you feel a lot more positive, and you've also satisfied that boredom, which is also probably the reason that you're diving in the cupboards. Yeah. So yeah, behaviour replacement like that, and what that's doing is it's encouraging you to be mindful about your eating. So sometimes going off plan is just mindlessness. So I have this thing which I call Integrum's circles of mindful eating, and I've got these sort of overlapping circles where everything we eat is for a reason. It's for either it's to get towards our goal, or it's for enjoyment, and all the other reasons. Yeah. Now, what we want is, as much as possible, we want that to overlap. Sometimes it's going to be either side. Now, if we're over at the enjoyment scale and not towards our goal scale too many times, we've got a problem. And I encourage people to think about those circles every time. Every time you put something into your mouth, engage your brain and go, why am I having this food? Is it beneficial for my health? Is it beneficial to my goal? Or is it beneficial to my, my sanity and my lifestyle? And then the other thing is just swaps. So something simple like, are you diving for a tub of ice cream? And then you've got the whole halo top sensation these days. There's enough things out there now, these sort of low calorie or high protein things, which actually you can find something that is in that middle ground of, it allows me to have flexibility. It allows me to have that little bit of enjoyment, but without completely undermining everything I'm trying to do with my diet.
Yeah, I think it's a great point when you mentioned about your client. I think it's always an external factor within your environment that causes that, the boredom or something like that.
Yeah, definitely.
It could be, quite a lot of the people in my clients that I train, sometimes have a stressful day from the job and they'll go, do you know what, actually, I just want to go get a pizza, I want to take away. On the other end of it, could be a social side of it. I know we've had many a rugby reunion and a few more shandies drank than what
the theory goes out the window.
Yeah, but then again, equally, my opinion is I like having a beer. I'm not going to turn down having a drink with old friends, lads I used to play rugby with.
Absolutely.
And I think it's good to not feel guilty about that and not be all right. I'm going to throw everything out of the window.
Yeah, definitely.
I think that leads you to a more sustainable and healthy lifestyle than just being, like you mentioned, right, I'm just going to eat out of the Tupperware box, I'm just going to stick to this. You need to have that little bit of freedom, if you like, to be able to have it and then not feel.
That's it. Yeah, that's the reason on those circles that enjoyment is there, because it's important. It's just, be there now and again, but not, 24/7 and completely indulging yourself all the time. Remember that goal is there for a reason.
Yeah. So the next one, I actually had to send you a message about this because I had no idea what it actually, what it actually was. It's actually the same guy that asked this question. What are your thoughts on CBD? You didn't say in relation to what? CBD. For anyone listening, I just want to put that out there. I didn't know what this was. It's actually cannabis oil. Okay.
Yeah.
So, what's the thoughts on that? Is it detrimental to health goals or anything like that, or is it just, okay?
Yeah, so I'm probably the wrong person to tell you exactly what CBD oil is, but it's essentially cannabis oil with the HTC chemical removed. So it's not detrimental. Is the suggestions to health, and actually now certainly as it's getting legalized for like more major health conditions, epilepsy and various things like that. There's a lot of research now going on with a big case being in the news recently. But as you say, you said to me, been like, I don't even know what this stuff is. But there was no direction with it. So I think what I'll do is I'll be careful not to step outside of my box, start talking about epilepsy or start talking about anything else like that.
Yeah.
For me, what I would say is there's very little actual empirical scientific research on it at the moment, because it's been such almost like a taboo until quite recently. America legalized CBD oil a little bit before us, but we've just started to relax our approach on it as well. So I think now we're going to see more research into its effects on different things. But because there's not too much research on it, there's not a lot to say about it at the moment. But there is some anecdotal stuff. So, some people are saying, it helps with my joint pain, it helps with this, it helps with that. The strongest suggestions in terms of, for what we're interested in terms of weight management and in terms of performance and health, there's suggestions for it improving sleep, which perhaps for obvious reasons. For me, though, my initial questions, certainly if it's only anecdotal research, is that cause and effect? Or is that, like you say, just from relieving stress and winding down? Could the same be achieved with a bottle of beer, with a pizza, with a training session? There's a lot of research to suggest turning your phone off a couple hours before bed improves sleep. So where's the difference there?
It's a little bit like when people chat to me about foam rolling and stretching. It's one of those
Yeah.
things where you feel good after it, yeah, sweet, knock yourself out. If you don't like it, if stretching doesn't benefit you, don't do it. Sort of, unless there's an actual, some definitive answers coming out for it.
Yeah, there's no cause and effect at the moment, so it's definitely not going to be something that we advocate, but within our box. But you know, if you're somebody who takes it and you know you're confident that it helps you with whatever it might be, then again, we can't discourage you from doing so.
So the final question then, okay, is insulin resistance and sensitivity. Okay.
Yeah.
Is that actually a thing? And how do you test it?
Yeah, this is quite a niche one, really. Yes, it is a thing. What I'd love to have a chat with the person who asked it, actually, because usually there's going to be two types of people that ask this question. It's going to be somebody who's diabetic, or associated with that, or somebody who's looked at the work of somebody like Tim Noakes, Zoe Harcum, blah blah blah, and those people are plebs. Yeah, it is a thing. It's a thing in that it's a marker for diabetes, pre-diabetes. However, it's not related to weight management, which is what these other people are saying, that, we need to, insulin drives fat storage. It doesn't at all. That's the insulin hypothesis has been widely discredited. So for a healthy individual, then it's probably not worth worrying about. If it's in terms of like a diabetic or pre-diabetic situation, then yeah, of course, and you'll know what you need to do about that. But even then, it's not about it's not the insulin. That's just a marker for the situation that you're in. And then if it's type 2, it's about reducing calorie intake, reducing weight, and you often see those symptoms improve. The way that it's tested is just a fasted OGTT, which is an oral glucose tolerance test. So what you do is you go to the doctors, or maybe in a lab. We've done it in lab studies before. You'd fast for a period, 24, 36 hours, whatever it might be, and then you blow or take samples, and it tests the level of glucose in a fasted state, and it says whether it's in a normal range or not.
For the person that did ask this question, I can't think off the top of my head who did ask this. Obviously, I want to be chatting with Connor about how you can get in contact with him, and if you have any questions. So if you are listening, we'll
yeah, definitely.
So I quite enjoyed that. I wish I had some more questions to
Likewise.
Yeah, I remember when I came up to you before. Yeah, I like your thoughts on nutrition. I like your thoughts on coaching and that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
For anyone listening who is interested in maybe getting involved in coaching with you, or would like to ask you any more questions, where can people find you, and where can people get in contact with you?
Yeah, so I'm on Facebook and Instagram, Integrum Nutrition and Fitness, and as of very recently, got a website which is integrum-nutrition.co.uk. And yeah, any friend of Stephen's is a friend of mine, so hit me up and we'll have a chat.
Yeah, as always, it's an absolute pleasure, to chat with you. Again, I wish I had more questions. Anyone listening, 100%, if you have got any questions, sometimes it's a little bit out of my scope to answer some of the questions that you've got. 100% chat to Connor. He's a real smart guy. Give him a shout. Okay. Thanks again for listening. Thanks to you, Connor, for taking the time to chat with me.
Thank you.
And I'll see you all next week.
Yeah.